Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I had never been the type of person to shop at dollar stores. Not because I thought I was too good for them or anything like that, but more because I just never lived close to one growing up. My parents were brand-loyal, coupon-type people who did all their shopping at places like Kroger or Target. That habit stuck with me as I got older. So, by the time I was in my mid-20s and living alone in a small apartment in a working-class part of Charleston, South Carolina, dollar stores just weren't part of my routine. But I was broke. I'd just switched jobs, left a corporate call center job that was eating me alive, and started working nights at a shipping warehouse. The pay was better, but the shift change threw my body into chaos. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks, and my brain was mush most days. Rent was due, and every dollar counted. That's how I ended up at a place called Dollar Zone one Tuesday night. It was late March. It was still chilly at night, and I remember how quiet everything felt when I pulled into the near-empty parking lot. The street lamps buzzed overhead. There was a gas station nearby, mostly empty, and one of those cheap motels behind it that always had curtains drawn and a steady stream of strangers coming and going. I needed trash bags, paper towels, and a new phone charger. My last one sparked and died the night before. I figured I'd try Dollar Zone and see how much I could save. Plus, part of me was just curious. The store was older, small, and fluorescent lit. A woman behind the counter didn't even look up as I walked in. There were no other customers that I could see, just me and her, at least at first. I grabbed a little red basket and started going up and down the aisles. The products weren't name brand. Some had strange foreign labels or knockoff logos that looked almost but not quite familiar. The kind of stuff that makes you squint and laugh a little, like Dawn dish soap or Swiffer's pads. Still, I could feel myself mentally adding up the savings, telling myself it was worth it. I was in the second aisle, cleaning supplies, when I first felt her. I hadn't heard her walk up. I didn't even look at her at first. But there was this weird weight in the air, like when someone's watching you and you just know. It was the stillness that made me notice her. Like something in the energy of the space shifted. I kept looking at the shelf, pretending to compare sponges or whatever, but I could feel her just standing there. After a few seconds, I moved on. I turned into the next aisle, kitchen items maybe, and that's when I finally looked over my shoulder. She was there again. A short woman, maybe mid-40s, thick dark hair with a lot of volume like it had been teased or curled. Her clothes were a bit mismatched, floral top, jeans too big at the waist, and cheap white sneakers. Her eyes were deep set, and something about them made my stomach tighten. I gave a quick half smile, the way women sometimes do when we're trying not to offend someone that gives us a weird vibe, and I turned away. She didn't smile back. I moved to another aisle. She followed. This continued for at least 5 more minutes. Every time I changed aisles, she ended up near me. Never directly behind, never too close, but always within view. At first, I thought maybe she was just shopping the same aisles, but it started to feel timed, purposeful. I started avoiding eye contact. I pretended to be on my phone. I gripped the plastic handle of my basket tighter each time I turned and saw her a few feet away, still watching. Then something happened that made my blood run cold. As I turned into the frozen food section near the back, I heard her say something. Soft, mumbled, but loud enough to hear the words, "You smell like my daughter." I froze in place. I wasn't sure I heard it right. I turned halfway, pretending to look at the freezer door, and saw her again, just standing there, not looking at the food, just looking at me. That's when I noticed something strange about her eyes. They were wide, too wide, like she hadn't blinked in a long time. Her pupils looked huge, unnatural, like she was on something. My heart started racing. I didn't say anything. I just walked away, abandoning the freezer aisle and heading toward the front. I went to the checkout counter, dumped my basket, and tried to act normal. The cashier was a young guy, maybe 18 or 19. He gave me a nod, rang up my stuff quickly, and bagged it without comment. The woman didn't come to the front. I paid, muttered a quick, "Thanks," and left. The parking lot was even quieter now. A light wind picked up. I walked to my car, quickly unlocked it, and loaded my things into the back seat. I got in, shut the door, and locked it immediately. Then I saw it. A dusty, silver sedan parked near the edge of the lot, about 50 feet away. I hadn't noticed it when I arrived. Maybe it had just pulled in. Maybe it had been there the whole time. Either way, when I turned the key in the ignition, the sedan's headlights flicked on. I froze. The car started moving, slowly at first, then a little faster. I stayed in reverse, ready to back out once it passed, but it didn't pass. Instead, it veered toward me, and then it hit me. Not hard, but enough to jolt the car and slam my body against the seat. I screamed. The silver sedan backed up a few feet. That's when I saw her behind the wheel. It was her, the woman from the store, and she was laughing. A strange, dry laugh, mouth wide open, eyes huge, and then, without warning, she peeled out of the parking lot and disappeared down the street. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and called 911. The police showed up 20 minutes later. I gave them everything I knew. The make and model of the car, the description of the woman, and the fact that she had been following me inside the store. They took my statement but didn't seem optimistic. Later, I got a call saying the car wasn't even hers. It was registered to a man who lived at that rundown motel behind the gas station. The woman had stolen it, apparently, though he hadn't reported it because, as the officer put it, they were close. The story that emerged afterward chilled me to my core. Her name was Rosalind Baines, a former school teacher turned sex worker. She'd spiraled into drug addiction after a bad divorce and had been staying at that motel for months. The man who owned the car was her boyfriend, or maybe her pimp, depending on who you asked. The officer told me, off the record, that Rosalind had a history of erratic behavior, including a prior incident where she followed a young girl through a CVS and tried to convince her that she was her missing daughter. The girl was a complete stranger. The cops found Rosalind 3 days later, wandering near the interstate barefoot and mumbling. She was detained under psychiatric hold, but they didn't charge her for the hit because the car's owner refused to press charges. He doesn't want to be involved, they said. I never saw her again. But for months after, I'd lie awake at night wondering what would have happened if I hadn't left the store when I did. If I'd confronted her, if I'd made eye contact. What did she want? Did she think I was her daughter, or someone else entirely? Was she planning to hurt me? Or was I just the unlucky focus of a delusional mind high on God knows what? I'll never know. But I've never stepped foot in a Dollar Zone or any dollar store again, and I never will. I never expected anything interesting to happen while working at a dollar store. That was kind of the appeal of it. Back in 2014, I was in a rough place financially. I had dropped out of community college halfway through my second semester because I couldn't afford both tuition and rent. I'd just moved into a cheap rundown apartment in a town called Redfield, in upstate New York. It was one of those places where the air always smelled like old wood and diesel fuel, and where everyone either knew each other or didn't care enough to ask. I landed a part-time job at the local Dollar Tree a couple blocks away. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a job. Minimum wage, long hours on my feet, customers who treated me like furniture. I didn't complain. I just needed to hold on until I could save enough for something better. Most of the time, I worked the closing shift alone. It wasn't as bad as it sounds. We were open until 10 p.m. and the store was small, just 10 aisles total, a little back room for storage, and one of those sad little break rooms with a microwave that made everything taste like cardboard. Evenings were usually dead after about 8:30. It gave me time to restock shelves, clean up, and then wait out the final hour at the front counter. Quiet was fine by me. But one night, I still think about it even now, years later. Quiet became terrifying. It was a Thursday. I remember because it had been overcast all day, and the weather was weirdly warm for October. The kind of muggy, sticky warm that feels like it shouldn't be there. Like the air itself didn't want to be touched. I was scheduled to work 3 p.m. to close. It had been a completely normal shift. The usual crowd came in after school. Kids buying candy, teenagers trying to act cool, older ladies stocking up on off-brand paper towels. By the time it hit 9:30, I hadn't seen a customer in almost 20 minutes. I was sitting behind the counter playing a game on my phone. I always kept the volume low, just in case someone walked in. That night, I was deep into one of those time-killer games, match 3 puzzles or something. I was zoning out hard, barely even blinking. Then I heard a noise. Clatter. It came from somewhere in the middle of the store, loud enough to snap me out of my game. I paused and sat up straighter, listening. It sounded like something had fallen. A single object, maybe a plastic bin or a stack of paper plates. I looked up toward the aisles, but the way the store was laid out, I couldn't see more than the first few sections from where I was. I hesitated. I wasn't scared at that point, more curious, maybe slightly annoyed. Things fell sometimes. Shelves were cheap, and the stockers didn't always line stuff up right. It happened. Still, I stayed put. I was comfortable, and I figured I'd clean it up during closing checks. About 3 minutes later, another sound. Thump. Louder this time. I jumped a little in my chair and stared toward the back of the store. This time it sounded heavier. I squinted, trying to see if anyone had walked in. The bell above the front door was loud, and I hadn't heard it. Then something in my chest tightened. There was no one in the store, I was sure of it. I'd seen the last customer leave 10 minutes before. The front door never opened again. I would have heard it. I would have felt it. That's when I started to feel off. The quiet suddenly felt too quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. I set my phone down and stood up. My sneakers squeaked slightly on the floor. I slowly moved out from behind the counter and toward the aisles. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding small and thin against the fluorescent lighting. Nothing. No footsteps. No reply. I walked slowly toward where I thought the sound had come from. Aisle 6, maybe 7. Plastic goods and canned food. My heart was beating a little faster than it should have. I didn't know why I was nervous. Maybe it was just the stillness, or the feeling of being watched. When I turned into aisle 7, I saw it. 2 items had fallen to the floor. Some kind of aluminum foil trays and a package of holiday napkins. Not heavy, but not the kind of thing to fall by themselves unless someone had touched them. I stared at them for a long moment. Then I bent down, picked them up, and looked around. The shelves were full but orderly. Nothing else looked disturbed. I placed the items back in their spot, straightened a crooked row of plastic forks, and stood still again. Something didn't feel right. I couldn't shake it. That sense of being not alone. I turned back toward the front. Then I heard it again. Another crash. This time from the opposite end of the store. Loud. Something hard and plastic. Probably aisle 2 or 3. The toy section. I froze in place. My mouth went dry and I felt goosebumps crawl up my arms. "Is someone in here?" I called again, a little louder now. I could hear my own breath. No answer. I knew I had to check. Even if it was just a kid messing around or someone who slipped past the entrance bell, I had to look. I was technically responsible. I made my way across the store, trying to move quietly. When I reached aisle 2, I stopped cold. There, in the middle of the aisle, was a toy truck, bright red, flipped upside down. And behind it, a stuffed animal had been thrown off the shelf. A small unicorn, its eye missing. I stood still for a long time, trying to process what I was looking at. Then I heard something that turned my blood to ice. Footsteps, light, quick, deliberate, running, but not toward me, away, toward the front of the store, toward the register. I turned and sprinted back the way I came. My shoes slapped against the floor. I rounded the end cap at the front aisle and stopped short. There was a man standing behind the checkout counter. My checkout counter. He had one knee up on the small counter shelf and both hands on the register. I watched frozen as he tried to yank it open. Hard, quick pulls. It didn't open. Thank God I had locked it earlier out of habit. The man looked up and saw me. We locked eyes. He didn't say a word. Just turned back to the drawer and started slamming his hand against it. He banged the side, trying to knock it loose, then grabbed underneath and started trying to pick the whole machine up. My voice finally came back to me. "Hey, stop, I'm calling the cops." The man didn't flinch. He jumped down, ran to the second register, and tried that one too. Locked. I always kept them all locked if they hadn't been used. "I'm calling," I yelled again, backing toward the office door where the landline was, but I fumbled in my pocket for my phone. My hands were shaking. The man gave up. He threw something small, maybe a pen, then bolted, straight through the front door. The bell rang as he yanked it open and vanished into the night. I ran to the door and immediately turned the lock. I didn't care that we still had 15 minutes before closing. We were done. I stood there, staring out the glass window, trying to steady my breathing. The parking lot was dark. A single flickering light illuminated part of the sidewalk, but I didn't see where he went. I called 911. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. I walked them through everything. They took a look around the store, asked for the security camera footage, which I wasn't authorized to give them, but said the manager would follow up the next morning, and wrote up a report. The man was never found. He never came back, as far as I know. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. The worst part wasn't that he tried to steal from us. The worst part was that I never knew he was there. He must have been hiding somewhere in the store before we even closed. Maybe crouched between two shelves. Maybe ducked into the stockroom when I wasn't looking. He was silent, patient, and he waited. That still haunts me. How close he was the entire time, how well he hid, and how I never even saw him until he wanted me to. I quit a few weeks later. I told them it was because I found something closer to home. But the truth was, I didn't feel safe anymore. Not in that building, not alone at night. Sometimes when I walk past a Dollar Tree now, even in broad daylight, I feel that same chill creep over me. And I remember the quiet, the unnatural, waiting kind of quiet, the kind that hides something that's not quite gone. I wasn't someone who went to Dollar Tree very often, not because I thought I was above it or anything like that. It just wasn't part of my usual route. But that changed after I moved into a small rental duplex in a new part of town, tucked behind a highway ramp and sandwiched between an old laundromat and a chain of fast food places. Rent was cheap, and so were the neighbors. The kind of people who minded their own business unless you parked in their spot, and then you'd hear about it, usually with a passive-aggressive sticky note or two. It was a Tuesday evening when I decided to finally check out the Dollar Tree a few blocks away. I'd just gotten back from work, and the thought of driving to a big box store felt exhausting. I needed groceries, paper towels, and maybe a new plastic bin for my closet. So I figured, why not? It was already dark outside, not late, probably around 8:45 p.m., but the winter skies made everything feel like midnight. I remember putting on my hoodie and grabbing a canvas tote, feeling a little too tired for the errand but needing to go through with it. The Dollar Tree parking lot was mostly empty, maybe 4 or 5 cars scattered throughout. The overhead lamps buzzed faintly, casting long shadows that seemed to move even when nothing else did. I parked close to the entrance. A big yellow sign buzzed above. Dollar Tree. Everything's $1.25. The moment I stepped inside, I noticed how quiet it was. The only sounds were the distant hum of freezers and the faint murmur of some low-energy pop song playing through busted ceiling speakers. An older man stood at the register flipping through a flyer, and a bored-looking teenage girl leaned against the side of a display of Valentine's candy. She smiled at me when I walked in, more out of routine than interest. and I nodded back. I grabbed a green cart with a wobbly front wheel and started walking through the aisles. There were maybe 3 other shoppers inside. One woman with a crying toddler near the school supplies, a guy who looked like a mechanic covered in grease grabbing off-brand soda, and a third woman I noticed almost immediately, mainly because she gave me a strange vibe from the start. She was tall, probably in her late 30s, wearing a faded jean jacket and a red beanie. Her expression was unreadable, like she was constantly thinking about something just out of reach. She hovered in the toy aisle for a long time, pretending to scan shelves but clearly looking at something else, or someone else. I made a mental note of her, then moved on. I was in the back corner of the store, near the freezer section, when I noticed her again. She wasn't shopping, she was watching. Not just casually looking at people, watching, like she was keeping tabs on everyone's movements. I'd seen enough weird stuff working late shifts in random jobs to know what that kind of behavior usually meant. Either she was casing the place to steal something, or she was looking for someone specific. Still, I wasn't about to jump to conclusions. I grabbed a frozen pizza and a bag of mixed vegetables and wheeled my cart around the next aisle. That's when I heard a weird thump. I paused. It had come from behind me, back near the coolers. It wasn't loud, but it wasn't the normal noise you'd expect inside a store either. I turned back. That's when I saw her. She was climbing. No exaggeration. She had both hands on top of one of the tall freezers and was hoisting herself up like it was the edge of a swimming pool. Her foot slipped on one of the lower racks and sent a few cans rolling across the linoleum floor. She didn't seem to care. I blinked, confused. "What the hell is she doing?" I whispered out loud. She made it all the way up and disappeared into the gap between the top of the freezer and the ceiling. That's when I realized she wasn't just climbing, she was hiding. "Excuse me," I called out, unsure why. Maybe I thought she'd been disoriented or unstable. She didn't answer. Instead, her head popped out over the freezer edge, and her eyes locked onto mine, wide, wild, unblinking. "What are you doing up there?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Just needed a second," she muttered. Her voice was low but gravelly, like she hadn't spoken in hours. Other people were starting to notice. The mom with the kid pulled her child closer. The guy in the soda aisle stopped what he was doing and leaned out to look. Then it happened. The woman, without any warning, stood upright on the freezer, walked 3 or 4 paces, and jumped. She landed in my cart. Correction, onto my cart. The whole thing collapsed under her. The sound it made was like metal snapping in slow motion. My groceries spilled everywhere. Cans rolled, boxes tore open, frozen peas skittered across the tile. I stumbled back in shock, hands out. "Are you serious right now?" She didn't even flinch. She stood up, brushed her pants off, and looked right at me. "Wrong cart," she said, almost amused. "What is wrong with you?" I snapped. She didn't answer, just turned and jogged away like nothing happened. The store erupted into whispers and murmurs. A few people laughed nervously, others just stood in stunned silence. One of the workers, a stocky guy in a green apron, ran after her shouting, "Ma'am, you cannot be doing that." She didn't stop. She ran to the front of the store, shoved the door open, and disappeared into the dark. I knelt down and started collecting my stuff. The cashier from the front came over to help, visibly shaken. "She's been in here before," he muttered. "Always weird," always muttering to herself. "Does she do that every time?" I asked, trying to laugh but not really feeling it. "Not that," he said, nodding toward my broken cart. "That's new." I bought what I could salvage and checked out. As I left, I looked toward the parking lot, half expecting to see her lurking near the exit. But she was gone. I headed to the gas station nearby. My tank was low, and I figured it'd be good to top off before heading home. The whole incident was still replaying in my head. The stare, the jump, the absolute audacity of it. I pulled into the station, filled up, and went inside to grab a drink. That's when I saw a familiar face again, her. She was standing near the beer fridge, rifling through her pockets with that same dazed, wild expression. I quietly backed out before she could see me and drove off fast. I didn't want to tempt fate. I was 5 minutes from home when I noticed the flashing lights, police cars, a lot of them. I slowed down, unsure of what was happening. One cop motioned for me to pull off to the side, so I did. Up ahead, I saw another officer laying out a set of spike strips across the road. What the hell? Behind me, sirens, and then a blur of movement. A car shot past me, nearly clipping my bumper. Same car I saw her get into earlier. She was driving like a bat out of hell. The cops reacted instantly. The car hit the spikes, tires shredded, and the vehicle fishtailed across the road, skidding into a ditch. I watched, heart hammering, as officers swarmed it. They pulled her out. She fought at first, clawing, screaming, but they subdued her fast. Her red beanie fell to the ground, and her wild hair spilled out like black ink. It was her. It was definitely her. Later that week, I saw the story on the news. Her name was Angela DeWitt. 39, multiple warrants, petty theft, assault, breaking, and entering. She'd escaped from a psychiatric facility 2 towns over a month earlier. They'd been looking for her ever since. She'd been squatting in abandoned houses, sometimes living out of her car. She hit several small stores that week, stealing food, clothes, medicine. I guess Dollar Tree was just the latest stop. I don't shop late anymore. It's not that I'm afraid, not exactly. It's that I saw something in her eyes that night. Something unhinged, but also desperate. Something that said, I don't know who I am anymore and I don't care what I do. That's a terrifying kind of person. Someone with nothing to lose. She didn't just jump on a cart. She jumped into the part of my brain that doesn't stop replaying weird, surreal, dangerous things. So yeah, I still go to Dollar Tree. But not alone. And never, ever at night. I never thought working a minimum wage retail job could be dangerous. Inconvenient? Yes. Boring? Absolutely. But life-threatening? That wasn't something I expected when I took the night shift at Dollar Haven, a small, off-brand dollar store tucked behind a worn-down gas station on the edge of Lenora, Kansas. Back then, I was 22. My name, at least for this story, is Madison. I had moved to Lenora to live with my aunt after my mom passed away unexpectedly from a stroke. I was broke, emotionally wrecked, and just trying to rebuild. Aunt Tina didn't have much, but she gave me a room in her trailer and let me stay rent-free if I helped with groceries. So, when Dollar Haven called me in for a night shift cashier position, I took it without hesitation. The store was understaffed like most small-town places. After a couple of weeks, I was working solo for 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. I'd clock in around 4:30 p.m., clean and stock for a bit, and then man the register until 10 when we closed. After that, I'd sweep, restock, and count the drawer alone until I locked up at 10:45. The job was simple. The people, not always. It started one night in early November. The air had that dry, sharp bite, and the store's heater clicked constantly like it was dying. I was halfway through my shift when a man walked in. Average height, mid-30s, tan Carhartt jacket, facial stubble that bordered on a beard. His eyes, I don't know how else to put it. They didn't blink enough. I looked up, said the usual, "Hi, welcome in," and got a weird pause in return. He didn't say anything. Just looked around almost too slowly like he was memorizing everything. Then he disappeared into aisle 5. I brushed it off. Weirdos were part of the job. But I noticed that he wasn't grabbing anything, just walking up and down the aisles, barely touching products. 15 minutes later, he finally came to the counter with 2 energy drinks and a phone charger. He didn't put them down right away. "You work here every night?" he asked, like it was casual. "Most nights," I said, scanning the drinks. "You live around here?" I paused. Sort of. You need a bag?" He leaned in a little. You got a boyfriend? Right there, my stomach turned. I smiled, tight-lipped. I'm just trying to finish my shift. He didn't take the hint. You should let me take you out. After you're off. I'll wait. I shook my head. No thanks. You sure? I got a real nice truck. That weird grin again. I handed him his change and receipt, praying he'd leave. He didn't. He lingered for another 30 seconds, watching me. Finally, when another customer walked in behind him, he turned and left. No goodbye. Just gone. I thought that was it. Just a creep hitting on the cashier. It happens more than you'd think. About an hour before closing, the door chimed again. I looked up, and my heart sank. It was him. Same jacket, same dead-eyed stare. This time, he didn't even pretend to shop. He walked straight up to the counter. You off work yet? He asked like we were old friends. No, I said, forcing a firm tone. He glanced around. I'll wait. Can't be long now. There were 2 teenage girls in the snack aisle. I felt braver with witnesses. Listen, I'm not interested. Please stop hanging around. You need to leave now. His expression didn't change. You'll change your mind. I always get what I want. Then, just like that, he walked out. Calmly. No argument. But as he pushed the door open, he added, I'll find out more about you. My blood turned cold. 3 nights later, he came back again. It was a Wednesday, slow and dead. He walked in with confidence, strolled right up to the counter and said, Hello, Madison Reed. He said it with a grin, like he was enjoying a private joke. I didn't wear a name tag. I never had. Management didn't care. I'd even checked to make sure my last name wasn't on anything visible around the register. How do you know my name? I asked. I have friends. They know things. Small town. He winked and turned to leave. That was it. No purchase. No attempt to flirt. Just that name drop. It rattled me. After he left, I went into the back room and locked the door, heart pounding. I called the store manager, April, but she brushed it off. He's probably just bluffing, she said. Just keep an eye out. I'll file a note about it, but unless he does something, we can't do much. I started walking to my car with a box cutter in my jacket pocket. That Friday, after a normal shift, I drove home. Aunt Tina was working nights at the diner, so the trailer was dark and quiet when I got in. I made some noodles, watched a bit of TV, and around midnight, just as I was starting to doze off, someone knocked. Not a light knock. A hard, slow thump. I froze. I peeked out the front blinds, and my stomach dropped. He was standing on the porch. He knocked again, then tried the handle. The screen door creaked open. The main door held. Madison, I know you're home, he said through the wood. I didn't answer. I backed away and grabbed my phone, hands shaking as I dialed 911. He kept talking. You shouldn't be alone. Not this late. I saw your aunt leave earlier. That made it worse. He knew where I lived and when my aunt worked. Please send someone, I told the dispatcher. He's trying to get in. The longest 10 minutes of my life passed with him just standing there. The only thing between us was a flimsy deadbolt. Finally, red and blue lights cut through the dark. He didn't run, didn't protest, just stood there with that same grin. The cops told him to leave. Said he wasn't doing anything technically illegal. They gave him a trespass warning. That was it. But at least I didn't see him for a while. Weeks passed. I stopped working closing shifts, asked April to switch me to afternoons. She agreed, but the story doesn't end there. One afternoon, I overheard a regular customer, Miss Carla, talking near the greeting cards. She was whispering with her daughter. You hear about that girl from Hutchinson? That poor thing got grabbed walking home. Police say she was working nights at that little gas station off Route 3. The name hit me. I knew the girl, Lexi. She worked a few towns over. We had once trained together at a sister store, 22, like me. I asked what happened. She was found in the back of a trailer 2 days later. They said the guy kept her tied up, thought she was a prostitute or something. God help her. That's when it clicked. A week before Lexi went missing, she told me about a guy who kept showing up at her job asking weird questions. Told her she looked like someone he used to pay. She thought he was mistaking her for someone else. I suddenly wondered, had he mistaken me too? I started digging. I checked Facebook, deleted anything with my last name, changed my privacy settings. I found a profile that Lexi and I were both tagged in from months ago. A photo of us, arms slung around each other at a work party. My name, her name, both there. I realized if someone had seen that, figured out we were connected, and had a thing for girls who looked like Lexi, it wasn't random. I went to the sheriff. I told them everything. The visits, the name drop, the knock on my door. They took me more seriously this time, especially after hearing about Lexi. Turns out a man named Curtis Leland had been a suspect in several harassment cases. Nothing stuck, but the pattern was there. They searched for him. Eventually, they found him living in a camper on a piece of land 10 miles out of town. Inside, a wall with photos of women. Me, Lexi, others I didn't recognize. He had printed our social media pictures, had notes under them. Some of them included addresses. They found zip ties, duct tape, and a burner phone. Lexi's case was still active, but she confirmed it was the same man who took her. Curtis is now in custody. He's awaiting trial for kidnapping, harassment, and stalking. I quit Dollar Haven 2 weeks later, moved out of Aunt Tina's and left Lenora altogether, changed my number, started over. I never figured out exactly why me, whether he mistook me for someone else or whether I was just another name on his list. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he watched me, he followed me, and I survived. But I think about what would have happened if I hadn't locked that door that night. If I'd walked to my car just 5 minutes later. If Lexi hadn't been found alive. There are predators out there, and sometimes they wear Carhartt jackets and buy energy drinks. I hadn't always lived alone, but after moving out of my sister's place last winter, I'd finally gotten my own one-bedroom apartment in a quiet town called Marrow Creek. It wasn't a big place, just a few stoplights, a handful of fast food joints, and one of everything else. One gas station, one laundromat, and one Dollar Tree tucked between a hardware store and a shuttered video rental place. It wasn't anything special, but the rent was cheap, and I liked the independence. I was only a 10-minute walk from the Dollar Tree, and I'd usually go there if I needed small stuff, dish soap, snacks, paper towels. I'd gone there enough that I knew the aisles like the back of my hand. This story happened not long ago. I don't like talking about it often because, well, it made me start second-guessing the safety I thought I had. It made me realize that no matter how quiet or safe a town might seem, all it takes is one person to change everything. It started on a regular afternoon. It was about 3:30 p.m. Bright, breezy, and not too hot. I'd just finished up laundry and realized I was low on trash bags and dish soap. Rather than drive, I decided to walk. I had my earbuds in but didn't turn the volume up too high. I always like to be aware of my surroundings, especially walking alone. I headed down my street, cut across an empty parking lot behind the post office, and soon reached Dollar Tree. The place was maybe half full, quiet enough to not feel busy, but not empty enough to feel weird. I didn't notice anyone in particular. Just a mom with 2 kids, a couple of teenagers arguing near the snack aisle, and an older man pacing near the cold drinks. I didn't feel uneasy or watched or anything like that. I grabbed what I needed, waited in line behind a lady using coupons, and paid with the few crumpled bills I had in my jacket pocket. After that, I stepped outside, turned right, and started walking home the same way I came. It should have been uneventful. The air smelled like fresh grass and gasoline, and everything was so normal that I wasn't even thinking about anything other than whether I wanted to make pasta or just eat frozen pizza. I was maybe a block past the Dollar Tree when I heard the tires. A car pulled out from the parking lot, a white mid-size sedan. I didn't think anything of it until I noticed how slowly it was going. At first, I figured the driver was just trying to figure out which way to go, but then I realized something that made my stomach twist. The car wasn't just moving slowly, it was matching my pace. I glanced sideways, pretending to look at my phone, and caught a glimpse of the driver. A man, maybe in his late 30s or 40s, balding slightly, dark sunglasses, gray hoodie. I didn't recognize him, not even a flicker of familiarity. Then he did something that made my heart stutter. He rolled his window down. "Hey," he barked, not friendly, not confused. It was sharp. "Director, get in." I blinked. At first, I genuinely thought I misheard. "Excuse me?" I said, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. "I said get in," he repeated. "Hurry up." There was no smile, no hint of confusion. "No. Sorry, I thought you were someone else." Just a flat command, like I was already supposed to know what he wanted. I took a step away from the street and said, "Do I know you?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he leaned forward and said, "You need to get in. Now." That was when I knew something was seriously wrong. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. I turned the corner at the next block, even though it was out of the way. The car paused, just for a moment, then turned too. I picked up my pace. So did he. I could hear the crunch of his tires behind me, creeping like he was stalking prey. I didn't want to run just yet. I didn't want to show fear. My mind raced through what streets led where, which direction I could go. I kept walking fast, then turned again, this time down a narrow alleyway between two brick buildings. It was just wide enough for someone to walk or bike through, but not wide enough for a car. That was my chance. As soon as I turned into it, I ran, full-on sprint. My breath caught in my throat and the sound of my own footsteps echoed against the walls. I didn't stop until I got to the other side and peeked out onto the street. No car. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Nothing. Breathing hard, I stepped out and started walking again, this time making sure I didn't go back to my regular route. I zigzagged through side streets, checking over my shoulder every few seconds. And then, just when I was starting to feel safe again, I saw it. The white car, coming from the other end of the block. My pulse spiked. He must have circled around, or waited, or guessed where I'd come out. I couldn't believe it. This guy was still following me. I turned on instinct and sprinted toward a random house. There was no time to think. I ran across the grass, hopped the short wooden fence, and crouched behind a bush in the side yard. I waited. Through the leaves, I saw the car drive slowly past the house, brake for a moment, then roll on. I stayed hidden until I couldn't see it anymore. Then I bolted again, cutting through another yard, then across a back alley, over another fence, and finally back to a street I recognized. My building wasn't far now. When I got home, I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking, and let myself into the front entrance. Thankfully, the door locks automatically, and no one can get in unless they have a key or someone buzzes them up. I ran up the stairs to the 3rd floor, into my apartment, and locked every single bolt behind me. That's when I heard it again. A car engine. I walked over to the window and looked down. The same white sedan was idling on the other side of the street. I watched as the driver got out, looked up at the building, then walked toward the front entrance. I froze. He pulled on the handle. It didn't open. He pulled again. Then, like nothing had happened, he turned, walked back to his car, and drove away. He didn't run, didn't act like he was panicking. He just strolled. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know if he was watching me in the store or if it was random. I don't even know if he followed me all the way home because he recognized me or just guessed right. But I haven't walked to the Dollar Tree since. I've changed up my routines, started taking Ubers, even considered moving. Every little sound outside my apartment makes my heart race. I never reported it. What would I even say? A man tried to get me into his car. There's no license plate, no name, no security footage I know of. All I know is that something very real happened, and I'm lucky I trusted my instincts, because something tells me, if I had gotten in that car, I wouldn't be here to tell you this. I was never the type of guy to talk much at work. You could chalk that up to my job, or maybe just who I am. I've been in retail management for most of my adult life. I ran my own little logistics company back in my 20s, but after it folded during the recession, I spent years bouncing around from store to store. Big chains, small shops, you name it. Eventually, I ended up at a Family Dollar in a mid-sized town just a few hours from where I grew up. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the rent, and for once, I didn't have the pressure of running the whole damn show. That was kind of a relief. I lived just a few blocks from the store in a modest apartment complex, nothing fancy. 2-story brick building, creaky stairs, the occasional loud neighbor but cheap rent and close to work. I was in my early 40s, divorced, and mostly kept to myself. I didn't drink, didn't party. I liked things quiet. The store was understaffed like most retail places. Usually 2 or 3 of us worked each shift. One of the guys on the schedule with me fairly often was named Chris. Chris was odd, a big guy, strong-looking, maybe mid-30s. Always wore this fraying black hoodie with the sleeves pulled halfway down over his hands. The type of guy who looked like he didn't smile much. We weren't friends, not by any stretch. He barely spoke, and when he did, it was short and stiff. Sometimes I'd try to strike up a little conversation, just something simple like, "Slow night, huh?" And he'd either grunt or give some deadpan reply and go back to what he was doing. At first I figured he was just shy or socially awkward. Happens. I let it go. We got through our shifts in mostly silence. He was a decent enough worker, showed up on time, didn't complain. That was good enough for me. Until one night changed everything. That day started off normal. I worked an evening shift with a younger girl named Tammy. She was bubbly and talkative and covered most of the register work, while I handled stocking and prepping the next day's freight. Chris wasn't on the schedule. I remember that clearly because Tammy even mentioned it, said it was nice to have normal energy around for once. I half laughed and agreed. It was a quiet shift, a few customers here and there, mostly regulars. We closed at 9 p.m. I did a quick lockup and walked back to my apartment. It was only about a 10-minute walk, through a residential area, past a few closed shops, then a shortcut down an alley behind an old laundromat. I liked walking at night. The air was cool, and the quiet gave me time to think. By the time I got home, it was about 9:30. I threw a frozen meal in the microwave, kicked off my shoes, and watched a bit of TV. Just some reruns. I didn't have to be up early, so I stayed up later than usual. Midnight rolled around, and I was still on the couch with the lights dimmed, scrolling through my phone. That's when the knock came. It was loud, sharp, firm. I sat bolt upright. For a second, I thought I misheard it, but then it came again. 3 heavy knocks against the front door. It startled the hell out of me. Nobody knocks at midnight, not unless it's an emergency. My first instinct was that maybe something had happened to a neighbor. Maybe someone got locked out. I got up slowly and crept toward the door. I kept the chain latch on and looked through the peephole. What I saw froze me in place. Chris. He was standing there, right in front of my door, just staring at it, not knocking anymore, just standing. His hood was pulled up, his face blank, eyes forward, not looking around, just still. I didn't move. My heart thumped in my chest the way it does when something feels deeply wrong but your brain hasn't caught up yet. There was no reason, none, for Chris to be there. He didn't live in my building. I had never told him where I lived. Hell, I'd barely spoken to him outside of work. I didn't answer the door. I just stood there, watching through the peephole. He didn't leave. Not for a long time. Just stood silently. The hallway light flickered once while he was there. I swear it felt like I was trapped in a dream. One of those where someone is outside and you can't tell if they can see you or not, but they won't go away. He finally left. No knock, no words. just turned and walked off down the hallway, disappearing from view. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning I showed up to work with barely 5 hours of sleep in me. I'd convinced myself maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he had some strange, benign reason to be there. Drunk cousin in the building got turned around. Weird coincidence. But when I walked in the break room and saw Chris standing there, my stomach twisted. He looked the same as always. Hoodie. Blank face. Not even a, hey. Eventually, when the store was slow, I walked up near him and kept my voice casual. Hey, were you at my apartment last night? He turned to look at me. Dead stare. What? I repeated myself, explaining slowly. I saw you. You were outside my door. Around midnight, he shook his head. Wasn't me. Chris, I saw you. You were standing right there. You didn't say anything. Just stood there for like 5 minutes. I was home, didn't leave. He said it so flatly, like he was reading from a script. Then he added, maybe it was someone who looked like me. Or maybe you were dreaming. That last part got under my skin. He said it too smoothly, too rehearsed. I didn't push it. Something told me not to. After that day, I never worked with Chris again. A few shifts passed. His name disappeared from the schedule. One of the assistant managers said he quit, but didn't say why. Nobody seemed to know anything more than that. Just gone. I wanted to tell someone what happened. I really did. But it felt stupid. I mean, what could I even say? Hey, I think this guy might have come to my apartment uninvited and then lied about it. There was no proof. Nothing happened. He didn't break in. He didn't hurt me. But it didn't sit right. Weeks went by. Life went back to normal, sort of. But I started locking my door with more care. Started keeping a flashlight and a kitchen knife in the drawer next to my bed. Started noticing small sounds at night more than I used to. And then, just when I thought I was being paranoid, it happened again. One night around 2 a.m., I woke up to a noise. Not a knock this time. Just footsteps. Soft, slow, deliberate ones. In the hallway right outside my door. Then, nothing. I got up quietly, heart thudding. I looked through the peephole. No one there. But the next morning I noticed something I hadn't before. A smudge on the peephole glass, like someone had pressed their forehead against it. I installed a security camera the next day. Just a cheap one. It connected to my phone. I felt a little safer for a while. Nothing showed up on it for days. Until one night I got a notification while I was at work. Motion detected. When I checked the footage, my blood ran cold. The feed showed the hallway outside my apartment. Empty. Then, a few seconds later, the camera glitched. Static. For less than a second. Then back. And for just that split second, a single frame froze on my screen. Chris. Standing in front of my door. I quit Family Dollar the following week. I didn't tell anyone why. I just said I was relocating for personal reasons. Packed up, moved to a different town, different state. Started over. It's been a year since then. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted. Sometimes I wonder if I didn't react fast enough, because every once in a while, I still think I hear knocking. And when I look out through the peephole, I don't always feel alone. I never thought much about working at a place like Dollar Tree. I took the job because I needed something flexible and close to home. This was a few years back when I was living in a small apartment on Elmwood Street, just off Westview Avenue. The store was barely 5 minutes from my apartment. I could walk there, but most days I drove because I usually worked closing shifts and didn't want to walk home in the dark. The Dollar Tree I worked at was nothing special, just one of those small stores tucked into a strip mall, squeezed between a nail salon and a tax place that was only open during the season. The lights inside always had that faint buzz, and the break room smelled like popcorn and bleach. We were always short-staffed, and most nights it was just one person on the register and another in the back, if that. My name's Tessa, by the way. I was 24 at the time, just trying to stay afloat, living alone and dealing with the usual stack of bills and too little sleep. The job was simple, and honestly, I didn't mind it. You see all kinds of people come through a place like that. But this story, this one night, sticks with me in a way nothing else has. It was late autumn, the kind of evening where the sun sets too early, and by 5 o'clock, it already looks like night outside. I was working a solo shift, which wasn't unusual. The manager, Paula, had left after the shipment came in that morning and no one else was scheduled that evening. It was quiet, just a few customers trickling in every now and then. Around 4:30 p.m., I remember a man walking in. There wasn't anything especially odd about him at first glance. He had long, greasy brown hair tucked behind his ears and wore a thick pair of sunglasses, even though it was already dim outside. I greeted him like I did everyone. "Hey, welcome in," I said. He didn't respond, just walked past me and down one of the aisles. Now, we get all kinds: quiet people, loud people, people who just want to be left alone. I didn't think twice. A woman came up to the register shortly after, just buying some greeting cards and snacks. "You guys closing early today?" she asked. "Nope, just a quiet day," I replied, scanning her items. "Feels weird with how dark it's getting." "Yeah, winter's creeping in." We made small talk. She left. The man in sunglasses didn't come up until about 20 minutes later. He had one drink in his hand, some off-brand energy drink we sold in the coolers by the door. When he reached the counter, I noticed he didn't say a word, just put the drink down and stared straight ahead. "Just this?" I asked. He gave a tiny nod. "That'll be $1.25. He pulled out exact change from his jacket pocket, coins, no wallet. Paid. Still didn't speak. I tried to hand him the receipt, but he was already walking away. Weird, but not the weirdest. After he left, I saw him through the front window, just kind of loitering on the sidewalk in front of the store. People do that sometimes, waiting on rides, finishing phone calls, but he wasn't doing anything, just standing there. Over the next hour, I checked out maybe 4 or 5 more people. I kept glancing out the window and the man was still there, still standing. At one point, I saw him turn his head and look straight at the window, straight at me. By 7 o'clock, the store was dead. That's when I started feeling uneasy. He hadn't left. He wasn't smoking, talking on the phone, or walking around. Just standing. Every time I looked out, I saw him. Same spot. I debated calling Paula. But what would I say? That some guy was outside standing on the sidewalk? Instead, I called my coworker Jamie, who'd worked a shift the night before. "Hey, weird question," I said. "Do you remember some guy with long hair and sunglasses coming in?" Jamie paused. No, but that sounds sketch. Why?" "He's just been out front for almost 2 hours. Not doing anything." Jamie sounded concerned. "You're alone, right?" "Yeah." "Lock the doors at closing. Call me if anything weird happens." "Will do." By 9 p.m., it was time to close. I went to the door, turned the lock, and flipped the open sign to closed. As I did, I saw him look at me again. He was standing maybe 15 feet to the right. I grabbed my purse from under the counter and shut off the music playing on the small radio behind me. I went through the usual closing steps: cash count, locking the register, sweeping a bit. I left by 9:15. As I stepped outside, I felt my heart beat just a little faster. I kept my keys in hand and tried to walk fast without making it obvious I was nervous. He was still there, just standing. I walked past him to get to my car. I didn't look at him, but I felt his head turn. I got in, locked the door, and started the engine. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. He hadn't moved. About halfway home, I realized my gas tank was almost empty. I knew I wouldn't make it back and to work the next day if I didn't fill up, so I pulled into a small gas station on Maple and 9th. It was one of those corner stations, old pumps, a dim flickering sign, and just a single worker behind bulletproof glass inside. I got out and started filling up. I tried to shake the feeling off. Probably just a weird guy, right? Then, about a minute later, a car pulled into the lot. It was a small blue sedan, beat up and missing its front passenger hubcap. It didn't pull to a pump. It parked along the side near the dumpsters. I looked at the driver. It was him, the man from the store. My breath caught. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the gas pump. What the hell was he doing here? Had he followed me? Was it a coincidence? I told myself maybe it was just that. Coincidence. This was a small town. The store and the gas station weren't far apart, but he hadn't been driving when I left. He was still on foot. So when did he get in that car? When the gas tank clicked, I returned the nozzle and got back in my car. But I didn't leave. I sat there for a minute, watching him in my mirrors. He wasn't doing anything, just sitting in the driver's seat, watching the gas station. I decided to go inside, maybe grab something to eat, calm my nerves. I walked in and headed to the snack aisle. I picked up a sandwich and a soda. Then I heard the chime. The man had come inside. My stomach dropped. I didn't even pretend to browse anymore. I dropped the sandwich on the shelf and walked out. As I neared the door, I saw him turn. I walked faster. So did he. I got into my car and slammed the door shut, jamming the lock down with my thumb. I turned the engine and reversed out of the spot in one smooth motion. As I turned out of the lot, I saw him rush back to his car. He was getting in. I made a hard right down Ashmont Street, a quiet residential area, and shut off my headlights. It was hard to see, but I kept driving. Slow, careful turns. 2 rights, then a left. No sign of him. I didn't go straight home. I drove around for 15 minutes before finally pulling into my apartment's back lot. I sat there in my car, engine off, heart pounding. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Silence. No blue car. No sound but crickets and the hum of a nearby street lamp. After that night, I didn't see him again. Not at the store, not around town. I never reported it. I didn't know what I'd even say. Some guy bought a drink, stood around, then maybe followed me. But something about him, his silence, the timing, the way he didn't buy anything at the gas station, still haunts me. I told myself I was lucky, because he could have done something, and no one would have been around to stop him. To this day, whenever I see a small blue car in a parking lot, I hesitate. I check the rearview mirror a little more than most people, because sometimes all it takes is one wrong night, one quiet man, and a little too much silence for something awful to happen. I never liked shopping late, but sometimes my schedule didn't leave me with much choice. Last year, during the fall, I had just wrapped a photo shoot a few hours earlier. Nothing glamorous, just some catalog work for a regional clothing brand. I do freelance modeling here and there, mostly lifestyle stuff. It's not a huge career yet, but it helps pay my bills while I take online college courses. That particular day had been long. My feet hurt, my makeup was smudged from being on set since 9 a.m., and I was starving. I realized I needed to pick up a few things. Basic stuff like cotton pads, a new lighter, some cheap snacks, and cleaning spray. There's a place near my apartment, a small strip mall with a few shops clustered together. It's not the best area, but it's familiar. I figured I could stop by Dollar Village. It's like a knockoff of Dollar Tree. You know, same green signage, similar layout. I had only been there a couple times, but it was open late, and I didn't feel like going to a giant store like Target where I'd have to navigate crowds or employees pretending not to see you. It was about 7:30 p.m. when I pulled into the lot. The sky was that deep, bruised blue it gets in October, just before full darkness sets in. I remember because the air had that sharp bite to it, not full-on cold yet, but definitely not summer anymore. The parking lot was nearly empty, only 3 or 4 cars scattered around. A rusty minivan parked up close to the entrance and a small white sedan a few spots down from mine. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was tired and just wanted to get in and out. Inside, the store was quiet. Eerily so. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. One speaker played faint elevator music, the kind that fades into the background so thoroughly it feels like it's coming from inside your own head. I saw maybe 2 customers, both middle-aged women who looked like they were stocking up on Halloween decorations. There was one employee behind the counter, a short man with dark hair and a 5 o'clock shadow. He looked about my age, maybe late 20s. He wore a lime green Dollar Village vest over a long-sleeved thermal. I gave him a polite nod when I walked in. He looked up from his phone and gave me a smile that lingered just a little too long. "Evening," he said. "Hey," I replied quickly and moved past him. I made my way down the aisles, tossing things into the cheap plastic basket I grabbed at the door. Cotton pads, cleaning wipes, a box of off-brand crackers. Nothing special. I was halfway through the store when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned slightly. It was the employee. "Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to startle you," he said, standing way too close. I gave a quick, awkward smile. "No worries." "You here by yourself?" he asked, eyes scanning the basket like it held all my secrets. "Yeah, just grabbing a few things," I replied. He nodded but didn't move. "You a model?" That threw me off. I blinked. Yeah, sometimes." "Knew it," he said. "You've got that face, like the kind that shouldn't be in a dollar store." I didn't respond to that. I just gave a weak laugh and turned away. He lingered a few seconds longer before walking off. My skin crawled a little, but I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe he was just trying to be nice in his own awkward way. I wrapped up quickly and headed to the front. He had beat me there and was already back behind the register, standing a little straighter now. He didn't say anything when I approached, just started scanning my items, one by one. "Crackers, huh?" he said. "You don't look like someone who eats crackers." I smiled tightly. "I do." He raised an eyebrow like it was some mystery. "These are pretty gross. You sure you want them?" I nodded. "Yep." He kept scanning. "You live around here?" I paused. "Not really." He stared at me for a second. "I feel like I've seen you before." "I've only been here once or twice," I said. He nodded slowly, like he didn't believe me. "You should come more often, liven up the place." I didn't respond. The beep of each scanned item filled the silence. When he finished, I paid in cash to avoid dragging the process out. He handed me the change, then looked over his shoulder. "Well, now I'm off." He flicked off the light above his register and stepped around the counter. I gave a polite smile. "Oh, cool. Have a good night." Then I turned toward the door, but I heard his footsteps behind me, too close again. "Where you headed after this?" he asked as we exited the sliding doors together. I tried to sound casual. "Just home." He nodded and kept pace with me. "I was thinking of grabbing food. You hungry?" I froze slightly but kept walking. "No, I already ate." He smiled. "What did I just say?" I furrowed my brow. "What?" "I said I'm going to grab food. You coming with me or not?" His tone changed, more aggressive, like he had skipped a few steps in the conversation. "I don't even know you," I said, trying to stay calm. He laughed like that was the dumbest thing anyone had ever said. "You don't gotta know me, it's just food." I reached my car, I unlocked it, and as I opened the door, he suddenly reached past me and yanked it wider. "Come on," he said, "let's go." His hand brushed my arm. I jerked back. "Number, back off," I snapped. But he stepped forward. I could feel him trying to wedge himself between me and the door. That's when instinct kicked in. I didn't try to argue. I turned and ran. My boots pounded the pavement as I bolted away from my car. I didn't even think about screaming. I just focused on moving. I heard him yell something behind me and then the sound of footsteps. He was chasing me. The strip mall was dark between stores, but I saw the glowing red sign of a Maxmart at the far end. It was a discount department store that stayed open until 9. I aimed for it like it was a lighthouse. I didn't dare look back, but I knew he was behind me. I could feel it. My bag slapped against my side. my keys dug into my palm. I reached Maxmart's automatic doors just as they opened for another shopper coming out. I barreled past them, breathless, heart hammering. The other shopper, a man in his 40s, looked startled, but I barely registered his face. Inside, I found an employee by the service desk. "Call the police," I gasped. "Please. A man is following me. He tried to get into my car." The employee didn't hesitate. He picked up the phone immediately and asked me to stay put. I huddled near the carts by the door, peeking through the glass. But the man was gone. No one outside. The parking lot looked exactly the same, except more sinister now. The cops came fast, within 5 minutes. I walked them back to my car, which thankfully hadn't been touched. I told them everything. What he looked like. What he said. How he followed me and tried to force his way into my vehicle. They asked if I'd go back with them into Dollar Village. I agreed. The remaining employee inside, a woman I hadn't even seen earlier, instantly knew who I was talking about. "That's Devin," she said. "He just left." They took down everything and began a search. Apparently he lived a few blocks away. They found him later that night. I don't know what they charged him with, I just know they found him. I filed a report. I got a lock bar for my steering wheel the next day. I stopped going to that strip mall entirely. And the worst part? I kept replaying the moment he touched the door. That split second where he smiled like he had all the time in the world. Like he thought I was actually going with him. Like I didn't matter at all. He never yelled, never raised his voice. He didn't need to. He thought he was in control. But I ran. And I still have dreams where I don't. I never liked shopping at night. Not because I thought something bad would happen, but because something about nearly empty stores made me feel watched. You know what I mean? That unnatural quiet, those humming fluorescent lights, and the faint echo of your own footsteps down hollow aisles. Still, I had no real choice that evening. It had been one of those long days where everything just kept going wrong. My shift at the vet clinic had run late. I skipped lunch to cover a coworker's break, and I'd realized halfway home that I was out of laundry detergent, light bulbs, and a few other essentials. I didn't feel like braving a big grocery store, so I pulled into the Green Spot Dollar off of Barlow Street. It wasn't far from my apartment, just a 10-minute walk if I had to. But I'd driven because it was already after 8 p.m., and the July heat was still clinging to the air like sweat. The Green Spot was one of those dollar stores that felt like a time capsule. Old tile floors, mismatched shelves, that strange lemon cleaner meets mildew smell in the air. I'd been there enough times to recognize the employees by face, if not by name. It was never crowded. Honestly, that was the best part about it. That night, there were a few people inside. 2 teens whispering and giggling near the snacks. A middle-aged woman with a cart half full of canned goods, and an older man quietly browsing near the seasonal aisle. I grabbed one of the faded plastic baskets from the stack by the door and started down the aisle with toiletries, checking my mental list. That's when I saw him. He wasn't there when I came in, I would have noticed. He practically zoomed past me, actually bumping my basket with his as he went by. I flinched at the sudden motion. He muttered something that sounded like sorry, but didn't stop. Just kept moving like he was in a race. He had a buzzed haircut, maybe early 30s, maybe younger but rough looking. His jeans sagged and his t-shirt had holes under the sleeves. What really stood out, though, was that he was wearing mismatched flip-flops with no shoes, just dirty gray socks and those flimsy foam sandals you get at gas stations. I watched him zip around the corner into the next aisle. I figured maybe he was grabbing things in a hurry, trying to make it to some checkout deadline or close before a ride came. I let it go. I didn't think much of it until I saw him again a minute later, still moving fast, still stuffing random things into his basket like he was on a game show. But then something shifted. He turned into the aisle I was in and made direct eye contact. "Hey," he said, kind of loud. "Can you pay for this stuff for me?" He held up his basket like a trophy. It was full of random items, chips, Batteries, a spray bottle, deodorant, a pair of socks still in plastic, a toothbrush, and a half dozen other things that didn't make sense together. I blinked. No. Sorry. His face didn't change. No anger, no sadness, just stillness. Then he turned and walked away, not saying anything else. I watched him go down the next aisle and heard him ask the same question to someone else. I couldn't hear the response, but he walked away again a few seconds later. I should have left then. I should have just dropped my basket and gone home. But I didn't. About 5 minutes passed. I'd gotten some batteries, a lint roller, and was eyeing a 4-pack of paper towels when I heard that sound again. Flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop. He came around the corner fast, too fast, and stopped right in front of me again. The space I was in, near the back wall by cleaning supplies, was more open. He stood uncomfortably close. "You sure you can't just pay for it? Just a couple things, man. Just help me out." His voice had lost whatever politeness it had earlier. It was clipped now, annoyed. "I already told you no," I said, firmer this time. He didn't move. He looked down at his basket, then back at me. "You got an attitude or something?" he asked. His eyes narrowed. "What?" I blinked. "No, I'm just not paying for a stranger's stuff. Can you back up a little?" Then, without warning, he slammed his basket onto the ground. Everything inside flew out. A bag of chips popped open. Batteries rolled under the shelf. Deodorant bounced and landed at my feet. "What's your problem, huh?" he snapped. "What the hell is your problem?" I felt my pulse jump. He was raising his voice now. People in nearby aisles were turning to look. "I don't have a problem," I said carefully. "Please leave me alone." But he stepped forward. "No, you do. You think you're better than me? Is that it?" His tone was venomous. I took a slow step back. I didn't want to escalate things, but every instinct in me was screaming that something was off with this man. He kept repeating himself. "What's your problem? What's your problem, huh?" Over and over, louder each time, like a scratched record spinning out of control. I glanced around. An older man near the front looked toward us, unsure. One of the teen girls was peeking from the toy aisle, but no one stepped in. "Back off," I said again, louder. "Just go." "Hey!" a voice finally rang out. A store employee in a green apron jogged over. He was maybe in his early 20s, thin and pale, but clearly nervous. "You need to leave, right now." The man looked at him with pure rage in his eyes. "I'm not doing nothing," he snapped. "You're yelling at customers. I need you to leave." The man paused. I held my breath. Then, like a switch flipped, he grinned. "Fine," he said cheerfully. He turned, walked a few feet, then stopped. Slowly, he peeled off his socks and flip-flops, one at a time. The socks looked crusted and damp. He threw them at me. They missed, thankfully, but just barely. "Crazy bitch," he muttered. Then he turned and walked out barefoot, leaving his scattered items, shoes, and a trail of stunned silence behind him. The air inside the store shifted as soon as the door closed. It felt like everyone exhaled at once. "You okay?" the employee asked me. He looked shaken too. "Yeah," I said, though I wasn't. My hands were shaking. "Want me to call the cops?" I thought about it, but he was already gone. "No, it's fine. I don't think he'll come back." I was wrong. I checked out a few minutes later. The cashier, an older woman with short gray curls, asked if I was all right. I nodded, though I kept glancing toward the windows. The night outside looked darker than usual, more pressing. I hurried to my car, keeping my keys ready in my fist. My skin crawled with that same old sensation, being watched. When I got in and locked the doors, I saw him, across the parking lot, standing barefoot on the curb under a street lamp, just standing there, watching me. He didn't move. I reversed slowly and drove off, trying not to let it show that I was scared. But my hands clutched the wheel so tightly I thought they'd cramp. I circled the block before going home just to be sure I wasn't followed. That night I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. I kept checking the peephole on my apartment door, just in case. For the next few days, I didn't go back to that green spot. I started shopping at the bigger store across town instead, even though I hated the crowd. At least there, I felt safer. But about a week later, I heard from a friend who still goes to the green spot. She said a guy had been banned from the store for harassing customers. When she described him, I knew. It was him. He'd come back a few days after that night, asking people for money again. Someone finally called the cops. He ran before they got there. They never caught him. And the part that sticks with me most, what keeps me up some nights, isn't the yelling or the thrown socks. It's the look in his eyes before he walked away. That strange, empty stare, like he wasn't really seeing me. Or maybe he was seeing too much. I haven't seen him since. But every time I walk into a store at night and I hear footsteps echoing behind me just a little too fast, I remember him, and I keep moving.